Carolyn Praise Center. If you guys would like to stand and worship this morning, you are welcome to.
Clothed in majesty, holy fire, filled with wonder, righteousness he brings, a never-ending love with new beginnings. Christ Redeemer. Are you, Lord? Worthy, worthy is your name. Holy, holy are you, Lord. Worthy, worthy is your name. Shout, shout, shout it higher. Our King, He's the King of Kings. Shout, shout, shout it higher. Sing, sing, sing it louder. Celebrate Jesus Christ, our King. He's the King of Kings. Christ victorious. Holy, holy are you, Lord. Worthy, worthy is your name. Holy, holy are you, Lord. Worthy, worthy is your name. Shout, shout, shout it higher. Sing, sing, sing it louder. Celebrate Jesus Christ our King. He's the King of Kings. Shout, shout, shout it higher. Sing, sing, sing it louder. Celebrate Jesus Christ our King. He's the King of Kings. All who are thirsty, all who are weak, come to the fountain. Dip your heart in the stream of life. Let the pain and the sorrow be washed away in the waves of His mercy. As deep cries out to deep, we sing, come, Lord Jesus, come. Come, Lord Jesus, come. Come, Lord Jesus, come. Come, Lord Jesus, come. All who are thirsty, all who are weak, come to the fountain. Dip your heart in the stream of life. Let the pain and sorrow be washed away I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. I worship you. I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. 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 Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop. Never stop working, never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working, never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working, never stop working. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. 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 Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. Never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. Never stop working. You make all things work together for our good. You make all things work
All right, let's dismiss our kids. And nursery is also available. So we'll start with announcements this morning. If you haven't seen this flyer, make sure you pick one up if you want to go to family camp. It is September 15th through 18th. Don't forget to sign up. It's going to be a great time with a really large water slide. If you haven't participated in the water slide, you're missing out. 100 feet of fun. And foam. Lots of foam. The more bubbles, the better. All right. Also, Israel 2023. Yes, it's in the works. Hopefully it's going to happen this time. If you don't know what that's all about, you're welcome to go onto YouTube and catch up by watching some of the videos that have already happened out there. So, family camp and Israel tour. And next, I'm going to introduce a very, let's see, what's the right word? Someone who's got a lot of stick-to-itiveness. How's that for a word? A lot of, I've been knocked down, but I get up again. So let's welcome Joseph. Woohoo! Hello, Joseph.
Hello.
Go ahead and lean forward just a little bit.
Okay, I can do that.
So, I introduced you as someone who gets knocked down and gets up again. And I thought that was kind of fitting, as that actually happened to you.
A couple times.
Yes. You got thrown in a pit.
Yeah, a few times.
A few times. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just something I find hard to emotionally fathom. You know, you've got this loving family, you've got your father's favor, you've got this nice coach, you've got the cush position in the family, and then they throw you in a pit.
That was the pits.
Good one. How did you reconcile that in your heart and come out on top?
Well, it was really kind of hard because I didn't think I'd done anything wrong.
Yeah.
And yet my brothers hated me, and I don't know why they hated me so much.
That would be really tough. And then they sold you into slavery, and you know, you go to the Pharaoh's home and you're doing all good there and stuff, and then someone tells some horrible lies about you and you get knocked down again. And you got back up again.
Well, the only way to look when you're down is up.
That's a good point. That's a good point. This just seems to be the theme for you. But yet you just keep coming out on top, and you strive higher and higher.
Looking back on it now, I can see all those things, but at the time, I couldn't see those things. I just saw what was happening at that moment.
And in dealing with it in that moment, you chose to right yourself with God and look up. A lot of us would be like, poor me, poor me.
Well, I was poor because I was a slave, but
True.
my riches are found in God.
Yes. You truly went from rags to riches, didn't you?
I did.
That's amazing. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story with us.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I look forward to hearing more. All right. Thank you, Joseph. You're welcome. He got knocked down and got up again and again and again and again and again. All right. Debbie, come on up and join me. You. You weren't prepared for this? Oh. Well, welcome, Debbie. Woohoo! Debbie, I thought you would talk to us a little bit about Scooby.
Oh, Scooby, that's right. Yeah. Scooby is
Microphone.
so awesome. Scooby is so awesome.
Why? Why is Scooby awesome?
Well, one of the things is we're learning about the Lord. I wanted to take the class because I wanted to go deeper in the Word and know and learn about worship and prayer and spiritual fighting. Because I like to
You like to,
Well, not like people, but just, I do like to do that. Anyway, but there's so much to learn. I'm nervous, sorry.
oh, that's okay.
You learn about the Word, you learn about Old Testament, New Testament, you learn about prayer, the power of prayer, breaking strongholds, and just speaking life into people.
Yeah.
And learning how to walk in the Lord and use your gift, and then also to be able to minister to others. What else? There's so much.
So, Scooby,
Sorry.
go ahead.
This was really fun that we didn't know we were going to learn. We learned how to make puppets
Oh, yes.
and to be able to minister to children
And
teens.
tell them about the thumb and the puppet.
Oh, yeah, the thumb. You have to go down.
The thumb goes down, the fingers don't go up.
They just go down.
It's so awkward. It sounds
It
so
is,
simple,
'cause
but
you wanna
it's
do
so
this.
awkward. Yeah.
It's like this.
These are important things you learn in Scooby,
It
guys.
was.
We want.
But also the really nice and wonderful part of it is we became close friends
Yes.
with the people in our class.
Yes.
And we learned about each other. We were able to pray for one another. Carolyn, she was the teacher, the main teacher, but we also had Bill.
Woohoo!
He was the coffee man, but he also, came and helped when Carolyn wasn't able to. But we were able to interact and have questions answered. And I don't know, it was just a very fulfilling time for me. I'm really thankful that I took it. I suggest it to anybody and everybody
Yes.
because it's so good. It's very good.
So Scooby stands for South Coast Bible Institute, and it is a curriculum that gives you a 2-year degree when you're all done. It is video-based, so you get to hear preachings and teachings from some people that don't even exist on this planet anymore. It is amazing.
Yeah, and a lot of them were really good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was good. Good stuff.
definitely.
Good stuff.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Debbie.
You're welcome.
So there's information in your bulletin. If you guys want to sign up for that, sign-up sheet is in the back, and it's starting in September. Second Monday of, it's right there. September 12th at 6:30 here at the church. And that's our news for this morning. Thank you. Come on up, Carolyn. Deet, 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 deet. Yeah.
Mustaches and beards itch. Just thought I'd share that with you. Good morning. I'm really excited about next week. Molly's going to be here. I always say, good golly, it's Miss Molly. Molly is from here. She was Molly Meserly before she married. And some of you in church here now remember her while she was here as a young person. And her husband, Mike Cook, he was one of the staff members here when Fred Erickson was the pastor. And so they met here, and then eventually they got married, and now they're pastoring a church. And Molly is actually a regional pastor. She's actually one of Sam's bosses. And so she'll be back here next Sunday, and I am so excited to look forward to her. She's the one who is, at least at that time, was a practical prankster. And all of us who remember that about her. She's a delightful young lady, and I think you'll really enjoy her. So I highly encourage you to come to hear Molly. Well, this morning, as you know, we're going to be talking about Joseph. Joseph is actually one of my favorite Bible stories in the whole Bible. I love this guy. I mean, what's not to love about Joseph? He was a shepherd, and he took care of the sheep, of course, of his father, and he occasionally worked with his half-brothers and helped them with whatever they were doing. And periodically, he would snitch on his brothers to his dad. And that's found in Genesis 37, verse 2. He actually snitched on his brothers. That would make anybody a little uptight and a little upset with him. And his father favored him because he was a special son. And his dad had made for him a coat of many colors. And so he would walk around, 17 years old, walk around like, okay, look at you, look at me. Coat of many colors, I'm my dad's favorite. You know, 17-year-olds sometimes just kind of go through an era of, look how important I am. And I'm sure none of you did that. But Joseph then began to have some dreams. And he dreamt that there were corn stalks, and there were all these corn stalks around. And his corn stalk, all of the corn stalks bowed down to him. And then later, he had another dream. And this time it was all the stars that were there bowed down before him. And he told his family about it. And it says this in verse 10 of chapter 37. And so he told it to his father, and he told it to his father and his brothers. And his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall your mother and I and your brothers indeed come and bow down to the earth before you?" So there was a little bit of tension that was going on, and I'm sure the brothers were saying, "Who does he think he is? I'm not going to bow down before that guy. He's our younger kid brother, and he's already on my hit list." So Joseph was actually hated by his brothers. I mean, they were really, "I don't like that kid. He's just such a brat. You know, he's snitching to our dad, and now he wants us to bow down before him. Just who does he think he is?" So there's some really tensions and really issues that were involved in his life and in his heart in their heart at that time. And so the brothers were extremely jealous, obviously. And I don't think anybody's ever been jealous of me. I'm just not that kind of a person that I would have anything that anyone would be jealous of. But you know, I've been a few times jealous of a few other people, and I'm sure none of you have ever been jealous of somebody else. I'm just sure of it. Maybe. So then in verse 27, or 20 through 27, his brothers, the brothers are out taking care of the sheep, so the dad sends him out, going out and check on him, see how everything's going. And so they go out and check on him, but when they see him coming, and of course with his coat of many colors, "Oh, here comes that braggart, here comes that little snippy guy." And they, you know, their attitude just kind of began to well up within them, and they says, "We're going to kill him. We're just going to take him out." So when he got there, of course, they got him and they threw him in this pit. It was like a big cistern, but there was no water in it, but it was a huge pit, and one that you couldn't climb out of on your own. But Reuben, being one of the half-brothers, he secretly planned to free Joseph. He says, "I'm going to free that kid. I'm going to wait. They've thrown him in the pit. I'm going to wait until they're gone, and then I'm going to rescue him and send him back to his dad." But while he was gone, the brothers saw a caravan coming, and they saw that it was going to head toward Egypt. So let's not kill him. We don't want that blood on our hands. But let's sell him as a slave, and we get some money for this kid. So they plotted and planned, and soon enough, when the caravan got there, they got Joseph out of the pit, and they sold him to this caravan. And then they tore his clothes and threw some blood on it from probably an animal, so that they could present to their dad, "Look, it probably a wild animal killed Joseph." And their conscience was clear of killing him, but at least they got rid of him. Have you ever felt like somebody wanted to get rid of you for whatever reason? So here we see they go back with the clothes that Joseph had, and they present it to his father. And Jacob, his father, deeply grieves at the loss of his son. This man is torn apart. His favorite son, one of the sons of his wife, and he had several wives, but one of the sons of his favorite wife, and he was gone, and he went into a deep, deep period of grieving for that. Heart-wrenched. Joseph experienced family rejection. He was abandoned by his family. And while he was on the caravan, of course, they stripped him down to his loincloth, which was very normal back in those days. His hair and his beard were shaved off. He probably got sunburned on the way. And absolutely all the rights that he had as the favorite son to have everything he wanted, all those rights were stripped away from him. And he no longer had any say in anything about himself or anything else. He probably experienced a great amount of shame in what he experienced. And he was just really caught up. Who am I? What did I do wrong? I don't understand. Why? You kind of, hello? Hi. I'm not doing something right.
This isn't fitting your head well.
Okay. Rescue the perishing, care for the dying. We've got such a great crew, don't we? I love that. We've got such a fantastic crew. So now in Genesis 37, we see that Joseph was sold to a Potiphar, and Potiphar was an officer of Pharaoh, who was the biggest person in the kingdom. Potiphar was like the captain of a guard. He was like a bigwig. And so he bought Joseph. Now, I don't know about you. I can't imagine what it was like to have been a slave being sold back then. But I've seen enough pictures of the slaves that were sold in the South here in America, and how the people would go up and punch them and check their teeth and see how they were, and punch them on the back to see how strong they were going to be. I've seen those pictures, so my mind kind of overlaps a little bit in that direction to see how how Potiphar chose Joseph. But then we see in verse 3 of chapter 9, and then his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all he did to prosper in his hand. God blessed him. God had his hand on Joseph, even during those awful, awful times. And hello, okay. I'm just getting Q back there, making sure I'm doing okay. Thank you, Trace. And actually, because God blessed him, Potiphar's house and everything that he had began to prosper. I mean, everything began to prosper. Even in all of the things that Potiphar was in charge of, everything prospered. So Joseph actually was the overseer of everything that Potiphar had except his wife. And that was the only thing that he didn't have any overseer in. And so after a period of time, and it was a while, for that all to take place, but after a period of time, Joseph's wife looked at him, and according to the Bible, Joseph was a good-looking, well-built man. And she began to lust after him. So Potiphar's wife begins to hit on Joseph. Come and sleep with me. Come and lay with me. Come on. Hey, good-looking. Hey, I'm the bigwig's wife. So you have, and she just daily kept pushing him toward a relationship. And of course we know, because God had his hand on Joseph, and because Joseph was a man of integrity, Joseph totally resisted any temptation that was put out before him by Potiphar's wife. Well, she got a little ticked off about this. So one day, none of the servants were in the house, so she again invited Joseph to be with her. And Joseph says, absolutely not. And so she reached out and grabbed the coat that he had on, and he ran because he didn't want anything to do with this. So then she was really upset, like, who does he think he is? And then we see that she calls, help, look at this guy. He tried to get me in, today. He even left his coat behind. So she used what was left behind as an accusation of what he had attempted to do. So all along, he keeps getting things thrown at him. Have you ever been accused of doing something that you didn't do? And your whole reputation was put on the line because of it? I was. It was not a good time in my life. but God, but God, but God, in his graciousness and in his glory. So because of the accusations that were made, Potiphar threw Joseph in prison. Now, prisons back in those days weren't the nice jail cells with the TVs and stuff like that available to them, but it was down in the depths of the earth, and they didn't have good sanitation or anything back in those days, and so it was really the pits in a real sense of the word. And we see then that the keeper of the jail committed to Joseph's hand all of the prisoners who were in the prison. Whatever they did there, it was his doing. So the jailer saw the quality of Joseph, and he began to restore to Joseph some rightful authority because he saw that he had the organizational ability and the leadership ability to begin to give direction to the people that were in the jail. And so the jailer basically kind of was relieved of the heavy area of responsibility so that Joseph could have all of that freedom to run the jail as he thought best. And it worked. And it was going great. Then one time after this, and this was a while, we see that Potiphar had a dream. And it was a frustrating dream, and he was thrashing in his sleep, and he was just turning and tossing, and he just couldn't overcome. He woke up and he thought, what was that dream all about? So he called all of the bigwigs, and he says, okay, I lost my point right there, I'm sorry. He called all the bigwigs, all of the people who could interpret everything, and he says, I had this dream. I don't know what it means. Can you explain it to me? No, let's stop back one step before that. And I apologize. While Joseph was in jail, 2 of the inmates had dreams also. And one of the gentlemen was a butler. And he dreamt that there was a vine and had 3 branches and blossomed and clustered into ripe grapes. The baker, on the other hand, had 3 white baskets on his head. They were baked goods, and birds came and ate them. He says, we don't understand what this dream means. Can you explain it to us? And he says, yes, I can. Of course, God gave him the interpretation. And he says, butler, in 3 days, you're going to be replaced to your original position. Baker, in 3 days, you're going to die. Wow. That would have been a hard one to deliver as a message. But then Joseph looks at the butler and he says, 1 year before Pharaoh, please remember me. Please remember me. Now we go where Pharaoh has a prophetic dream. And there were 7 fat cows and 7 lean cows. And the lean cows ate the fat cows. And there were 7 heads of plump grain, 7 thin heads blighted by the east wind, and sprang up and devoured the 7 plump and full heads. Now, what is this dream about? And none of the wise men could interpret the dreams. They had no idea what it meant. Suddenly the butler remembered, hey, we had a guy in jail that interpreted my dream. Possibly he can interpret yours. So they sent for Joseph and brought him out of the prison. And first he had to take a bath and shave and clean and put on clean clothes and all that, because in the prison that was not available to him. And so Joseph made sure that he said, this is not in me. God will give Pharaoh an answer of peace. So he recognized that it was God that gave the interpretation, and he wanted Pharaoh to make sure that Pharaoh knew that it was not his ability, but it was God's ability through him. So he was giving God all the honor and the glory for what was taking place. Then God gives Joseph the interpretation of the dreams. He says, this is what's going to happen. You're going to have a lot of good things happen for 7 days. Or 7 years, I'm sorry. You're going to have a lot of good crops. I mean, you're going to have an abundance of crops. Abundance of crops for 7 years. But then after the 7th year, you're going to have 7 years where nothing will grow, everything will wither and die. It'll be a bad period in history here in Egypt. And so I'm sure that Pharaoh was kind of like, wow, what do we do about this? I can't understand what we can do about this. And so we see that Joseph then begins to lay out a plan for him. The first 7 years, while everything is good, let's gather everything that we can, all of everything we possibly can, and put it in barns so that when the lean years come, we'll have plenty to be able to share. And so that's exactly what took place, because when Joseph was 30 years old, Pharaoh promoted him to be the second person only under Pharaoh. And you see, I'm sure, now I don't know about you, but if I had been given that task without God's intervention, without God's knowledge, I would have said, I don't know. Have you ever been put to a test when you don't know what's going on around you, and yet you have to make some mistakes, or make some decisions, rather, and try to figure out what's going on and how it's going on? Those are hard times, aren't they, when you don't understand what's taking place? Sometimes in our life, things just happen, and we have no idea what's going on. We don't know what to do. We don't know how to do it. We don't know if we should do anything. Have any of you ever experienced that besides me? You just don't know. But you're willing to trust God. So now we see the 7 years of complete growth of everything. I mean, just everything was an abundance of everything that was taking place. Growth everywhere, growth everywhere. The animals were just multiplying, the grains and the fruits and everything was just multiplying. And so Joseph, in fact, was keeping count of everything that was coming into the barns, in the silos, and into the places where they kept such things. In fact, there was so much that after a while, he stopped even trying to keep track. And so that's what they did. He stopped giving any attention to it. He said, let's just bring it in. I don't care how much it is. Let's just keep bringing it in. But then the 7 years of famine kicked in. Have you ever been through a famine? I don't mean food. I don't mean animals. I don't mean, but just, you kind of go through a famine in your own life, your own spiritual life maybe. Things seem to not be happening in the Lord like you wish they were. Things seem to kind of be dead in the background and aren't producing anything in your life spiritually. How I see it is during those famine years of our spiritual lives, which on occasion do happen, might not last 7 years, that's the good time to pull out all of the reserve in relationship to the Lord. Trust Him for what He has said in His Word. Trust the experiences that you've had with Him in the past, and lean into Him because He's your strength, He's your salvation, He's your Redeemer. Just push into Him. Because we all kind of go through a cycle on occasion. When sometimes we think, God, are you really there? And God says, don't you remember when I did this, thus, and that? Don't you remember that my word says thus, thus, and this? Oh yeah, Lord, I remember. But God, I just don't feel like it. Don't go by feelings. Go by faith. Go by faith in who He is, what He has done, what He has written, and know that his relationship with you has not changed. But you need to oftentimes come before him and bow before him and say, God, I believe you even though when I can't see you. I believe you even when I can't feel you. I believe you, God. So here is Joseph now, the big wig right next to Pharaoh in Egypt. This little Jewish boy who's now 30 years old. He's now a grown man. And of course, he's dressed like an Egyptian. His haircut is like an Egyptian. His clothes are like an Egyptian. And he has learned the language of the Egyptians. It is an incredible experience. He has totally adjusted himself to that era, to that time. But you see, in Canaan land, there was also a famine. That's where his family is from. That's where Joseph is from. So his father says, you 10 sons, go on down to Egypt and buy enough food so that we can survive. Buy enough food that we can have what we need to get through this famine. So the brothers pack up their stuff and they head south. So you see then when Joseph sees them, he recognizes them, but they don't recognize him. So Joseph had really an upper edge on them because he could listen to them and what they had to say amongst themselves. But because he spoke to them through an interpreter, they didn't realize that he could actually understand what they were saying. Now that's an interesting concept for me. You'd be like the little fly on the wall, where he could hear everything that they said. So Joseph begins then to test his brothers. And he said to them, you're spies. You're absolutely spies. You came to check out the land. You came to see if we were vulnerable or not. You're spies. You're an interpreter, of course. And I don't know about you, but to be accused of something that you're not, again, is a very difficult thing. But Joseph was testing them to see where they were in their attitude, in their mentality, in their relationship with one another. And so the boys said, no, my Lord, no, that's not so. Your servants have simply come to buy food. We are all brothers, members of the same family. We are honest men. We're not spies. Yes, you are, Joseph insisted, and you have come to see how vulnerable our land has become. Sir, they said, there is actually 12 of us. We, your servants, are all brothers, sons of a living man in the land of Canaan. Our youngest brother is back there with our father right now, and one of our brothers is no longer with us. But Joseph insisted, I said, you are spies. This is how I will test your story. I swear by the life of Pharaoh that you will never leave Egypt unless your youngest brother comes here. One of you must go and get your brother. I'll keep the rest of you here in prison. Then we'll find out whether or not your story is true. By the life of Pharaoh, if it turns out that you don't have a younger brother, then I'll know you are spies. So Joseph put them in prison for 3 days. On the third day, Joseph said to them, I am a God-fearing man. If you do as I say, you will live. If you are really honest men, choose one of your brothers to remain in prison. The rest of you may go home with grain for your starving families, but you must bring your youngest brother to me. This will prove that you are telling the truth and that you will not die. To this they agreed. Speaking among themselves, they said, clearly we are being punished because of what we did to Joseph long ago. We saw his anguish when he pleaded for his life, but we wouldn't listen. That's why we're in this trouble. Didn't I tell you not to sin against the boy? Reuben asked. And remember, Reuben was the one that wanted to get Joseph out of the pit. But you wouldn't listen. And now we have to answer for his blood. But of course, they didn't know that Joseph understood them, for he had begun to speak to them through an interpreter. Now he turned away from them and began to weep. Then he chose Simeon from among them and had him tied up before their eyes and thrown in jail. Wow. So Joseph then provides the grain that they needed to take home, leaving Simeon in jail. And then when it happened, as they emptied their sacks, that surprisingly each man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when they and their father saw that the bundles of money, they were afraid. And Jacob, their father, said to them, "You have bereaved me. Joseph is no more, Simeon is no more, and you want to take Benjamin? All these things are against me." Again, we see Jacob deeply grieving, remembering what was lost, remembering and thinking that he might be losing again 2 more of his sons. And so they didn't go for a while, but then they began to run out of food after a period of time. And then it was time for them to be sent again to Egypt to buy more food. And, you know, they wanted to go. They wanted to buy more food. And their father says, go do it. We need the food. We need the stuff. They says, but we can't go unless Benjamin goes for us. We just can't go. And so Judah, he became a surety for Benjamin. And one of the most intimate and self-sacrifices in the Bible, he said, "I personally guarantee his safety. You may hold me responsible if I don't bring him back to you. Then let me bear the blame forever." So Judah said, if something happens to Benjamin, I will be totally responsible. I will take the blame for the rest of my life, and you can do with me and my family anything you want to do. I will make sure that Benjamin is okay. So then, of course, they begin to get ready to leave for Egypt, and Benjamin goes with them. And while they're there, the brothers are all invited to a meal at Joseph's house. Now, that would be quite a feat. Simeon was then brought out of jail and returned to them. And you know, there were like 3 places of eating there. Joseph had his own table. The Egyptians hated the Hebrews, so would not sit with them. And so the Hebrew brothers would be set in their own tables, would sit at their own tables. And interestingly, Joseph set them according to their age, all the way from the oldest down to the youngest, who was Benjamin. And they kept looking like, how did he know what our age was? Again, Joseph was going through an interpreter of what was taking place. And he ends up entertaining his brother in that way. But he gives Benjamin 5 times the amount of food that he gave to the other brothers. Now, wow, he's the youngest and he gets all 5 portions? What's going on here? I don't know about you, but my mind just kind of whirls with what they might have been thinking. I try to put myself in their place and think, he knows our age. How did he know our age? Benjamin, the youngest, is getting, I don't understand. And you can just picture the conversation that might have gone amongst them and through them in relationship to the situation that was taking place. So then after that was all over, everything was packed up, their food was packed up, their grains were everything that they were going to take back, and the brothers began to return to Canaan. But Joseph had their money returned to them like he did before. And Joseph had his silver cup that he used regularly put in Benjamin's sack of grain. And it says, and when they had gone out of the city, and they were not yet far off, Joseph said to his servant, or to his steward, get up, follow the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, why have you repaid evil for good? Is not this the one from which my Lord drinks, and from which he indeed practices divination? You have done an evil in doing so. Wow, can you imagine them trembling? I mean, absolutely. Joseph or Benjamin, the cup was found in his sack. Can you imagine the concern and the fear that they had? What are we going to tell our father? What are we going to do? How can we do this? And you can just see there was a whole bunch of questions in their mind. And Benjamin, of course, was saying, I didn't do it. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. And you could see him just kind of looking frantically at his brothers like, help, I don't know what's going on, but I didn't do it, I didn't do it. Wow, the drama that takes place. You see, Joseph tested his brothers again. Now hear me on this point. It's one thing to forgive. It's another thing to trust again. Just because you've forgiven somebody doesn't necessarily mean your trust is automatically there. Sometimes trust has to be proven over a period of time to make sure that the forgiveness is accepted as such. Now, interestingly, there have been some times in my life when I have literally walked through a deep period of forgiveness. But can I trust that person again? Not necessarily so. So forgiveness and trust are two different issues. But we are required to forgive. We're to be forgiving as God has forgiven us. We're to be forgiving. And we're to make sure that our slate is kept totally free of anything that we would hold against somebody else, regardless of what they did to us. But do we trust again? That trust has to be rebuilt, not accepted as a blind thing. Does anybody understand that concept? Yeah, me too. Every time I go down to LA, and last time I was down there was with Kaylee when we went to the university down there. I always take a time when I'm down there to go by the cemetery where most of my family is buried. I think there's like 19 or 20 family members there. And sometimes I'll stand beside the grave and I'll think, is there anything that's come up in my mind that I need to forgive for what took place in my earlier life? And there was a lot of bad stuff that took place. But is there anything that has come back in my mind since the last time I was here that I need to literally forgive just within my heart toward them? Because you see, unforgiveness begins to eat away in us. It doesn't affect them necessarily, but it begins to eat away in us. But if we can forgive and let things go, this is a good thing. But again, in my adult life, I have found several things that I've needed to forgive. But there's a few people I knew I could never trust again. But I can love them. I can forgive them. But trust is a totally different issue. And Judah intercedes for Benjamin. He says, referring to Joseph, "My Lord, previously you asked us, your servants, do you have a father or a brother?" And we responded, "Yes, my Lord, we have a father who is an old man, and his youngest son is the son of his old age. His full brother is dead, and he alone is left of his mother's children. And his father loves him very much. And you said to us, 'Bring him here so I can see him with my own eyes.' But we said to you, 'My Lord, The boy cannot leave his father, for his father will die. But you told us, unless your youngest brother comes with you, you will never see my face again. So we returned to your servant, our father, and told him what you had said. Later, when he said, go back again and buy more grain, we replied, we can't go unless you let our youngest brother go with us. We'll never see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us. Then my father said to us, as you know, my wife had 2 sons, and one of them went away and never returned. Doubtless he was torn to pieces by some wild animal. I have never seen him since. Now if you take his brother away from me and any harm comes to them, you will send this grieving white-haired man to his grave. Wow. And now, my Lord, I cannot go back to my father without the boy. The man's life is bound up in the boy's life. If he sees that the boy is not with us, our father will die. We, your servants, will indeed be responsible for sending that grieving white-haired man to his grave. My Lord, I guaranteed to my father that I would take care of the boy. I told him, if I don't bring him back to you, I will bear the blame forever. So please, my Lord, let me stay here as a slave instead of the boy, and let the boy return with his brothers. For how can I return to my father if the boy is not with us? I couldn't bear to see the anguish that it would cause my father. Wow. Talk about a heavy moment. Talk about a heavy moment. Sometimes the things that we do in life can have such a positive or such a negative effect on other people. You see, his father grieved for him, for Joseph, all of this time. He never stopped grieving. He always missed Joseph. And Benjamin, of course, was Joseph's full brother. Boy, what a heavy statement that he was making to Joseph. He did not want to cause his father any more anguish, any more pain. He says, in essence, I will give my life for my brother. But don't let me be responsible for the death of my father. But then Joseph looked at his brothers in this position. He had invited them, of course, for a meal. And Joseph cleared the room. He says, all of you people that are not here with these group, all of you out. Get out. Get out. I want all of you gone. So they all got up and, of course, obeyed him. He was second command of Pharaoh. They got up and left. And after the room was cleared, all but his brothers, Joseph said, he looked at the brothers very intently, very individually. He looked at him and it said, please come near to me. So they came nearer. Then he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. But now do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve your life. Wow. Think about that. Think how his brothers must have immediately felt. Like, what? You're Joseph? You don't even, he was, Joseph, of course, was dressed like in Egypt. He'd been speaking through an interpreter. Now he was speaking to them in their language. Can you imagine the impact that moment had on them? And then they began to reassess what he had just said. God sent you ahead, even though it was through our hands to do you harm, but God used that to send you ahead to save us and the people. I mean, I don't know about you, but I can't even get my head around all of the thoughts that must have gone through their minds at that time under those set of circumstances. I just can't get my head around that. Wow. Wow. Can you understand what was taking place at that moment? A point of reconciliation with family. Wow. And sometimes in our lives, we go through some pretty gnarly things where people have maybe tried to undo us, have lied about us, have tried to do us harm. And yet God can use whatever negative thing happened in our life and turn it for good. If we walk in forgiveness and we walk in love and we walk in relationship to Him, God can turn anything negative in your life into a positive. As you know from my testimony, a lot of bad things happened to me in my life as a younger person. But God has used every one of those because now I have an insight into what other people experience dealing with those same kind of issues. And God has allowed me to be compassionate to them because I understand where they are, what they're going through. And on occasion, the Lord has allowed me to minister to them. So, wow, God is so good. God is so wonderful. Because He can turn anything negative to a positive if we allow Him. God is so good. God is so good. So then we see Pharaoh saying, Joseph, invite your father and all of the family to come. And then Pharaoh provides all the wagons of stuff to go to get the family and everything there and bring them into Egypt. And they are relocated in the land of Goshen. And while they are there, Jacob says to Joseph, Joseph, when I die, I don't want to be buried here. I want to be buried in the land of Canaan. And so that's what took place. So then we see that when Jacob does die, the brothers get scared all over again. Now that our dad's gone, Joseph's really going to get us. He's really going to punish us for what we did to him. And Joseph says, no. What I said back then is what I'm saying to you today. You are forgiven. You are loved. You are cherished. You're my brothers. You and your families live happily ever after here with us. God is so good, isn't He? God is so good. Joseph, my favorite Bible character. We can learn so many lessons from him. How to live life, how to deal with issues, how to deal with rejection, how to not cause a problem for other people. Regardless of what our circumstances we find in our circumstances, we can see that God can use that and turn it to good. If we don't get better, if we don't get bitter, we can get better. And we can choose in any one of our circumstances to say, God, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know why this is happening. But God, I trust you that you will receive glory and honor for it. And I choose to trust you regardless of what's taking place. Or we can get bitter and say, why did they do it? And let it rip. But if we love God, truly love Him, And we ask the Lord that we can see through his eyes and feel with his heart and see what's going on. Can we trust the Lord to really show us his bigger plan for our lives that we might not be aware of? And to walk by faith, but to do the best that we can regardless of our circumstances. And not to hold grudges, but to love God and love man with all of our heart, with all of our lives. Joseph is a wonderful example that we can learn great, great lessons in how to deal with life that is often difficult, but which the Lord can receive the honor and the glory from it. Amen. So we'll have two prayer groups. One will be over here and one will be over there. Alice will be in the back. And if the team would come forward again, please. Whoops. Yep. Yes. So we invite you to come up for prayer. Shall we stand? So, Father, teach us your ways. God, that we might do the things according to your will for our lives in Christ Jesus. Teach us, Lord, that your plan is bigger than our circumstances. And that we can give ourselves totally to you and trust that nothing wrong in our life can happen without your grace to walk it through, to see triumphant glory given to you and us to grow in maturity and in faith and in trust. In Jesus' name, amen.
Nothing can separate, even if I ran away. Your love never fails. I know I still make mistakes, but you have mercy for me every day. Your love never fails. Stay the same through the ages. Your love never changes. There may be pain in the night, but joy comes in the morning. And when the oceans rage, I don't have to be afraid, because I know that you love me. Your love never fails. The wind is strong and the water's deep, but I'm not alone here in these open seas. Your love never fails. The chasm is far too wide. I never thought I'd reach the other side. Your love never fails. And you stay the same through the ages. Your love never changes. There may be pain in the night, but joy comes in the morning. And when the oceans rage, I don't have to be afraid, because I know that you love me. Your love never fails.
Let's sing this last bridge together, just like Carolyn said.
You make all things work together for our good. together for our good. You make all things work together for our good. You make all things work together for our good. And you stay the same through the ages. Your love never changes. There may be pain in the night, but joy comes in the morning. And when the oceans rage, I don't have to be afraid, because I know that you love me. Your love never fails. Your love never fails.
Well, hey, happy Sunday. Thanks for coming. And didn't Carolyn do a great job? Yeah. Well, you are dismissed. Don't forget your kids. Shelly, don't leave. I have a question for you. And hey, we love you. See you next week.